one of our contemporaries who managed to achieve impressive success and become one of the richest people in the world is definitely Jeff Bezos. This is a man who, over 3 decades, turned the Amazon online store he created into a leading global brand and earned many tens of billions of dollars from trading via the internet. Of course, one of the reasons for such an impressive result was a great choice of field of activity. The mid-1990s was the time of the dot-com boom, but as time passed, Bezos gradually increased his wealth, becoming the richest person in the world for the first time, according to Forbes in 2017. So the real question is, how did he achieve such success and what does he say about it? Hello, this is Wealth History, and today we'll discuss a man who bears a name known to many, Jeff Bezos. Do not regret about the past. Take care of the future. Another conference on the topic of business details and strategies. How many of them had already been in his life? Nevertheless, Jeff Bezos was outwardly completely imperturbable. His appearance should be simply impeccable and inspire complete confidence. There was still a little time left before the start of the conference, and he decided to remember how he came to his current status and what he had to go through to do so. Yes, now part of life seems to be something very distant and even alien, as if it happened to some other person. Very first steps. He was born in January 1964 in an ordinary American family, and his childhood was no different from the childhood of the vast majority of his peers. True, Jeffrey was always interested in technology, and therefore after school, he became a student at Princeton University, entering the Department of Computer Science and Electronic Measuring Instruments. After successfully graduating in 1986, he had a wide choice of his life paths. But by that time, he was carried away by the prospect of starting his own business, and Jeff spent the next whole 8 years in various positions in specialized companies, gaining experience in developing networks for consequent international trade. In essence, things were going well, and Bezos slowly moved up, reaching the post of vice president of D.E. Shaw's CO. It would seem that nothing needed to be changed in life. But he, nonetheless, decided otherwise, and in summer of 1994, unexpectedly for others, left a rather promising job. Because he came up with an idea that he wanted to implement as soon as possible. Bezos grinned inwardly, remembering that at first it wasn't easy for him to bring himself to move from New York to Seattle. In fact, it was a trip from one end of the country to the other. However, he imagined himself as an 80-year-old man who evaluates his life and has no regrets about what he has been doing all these decades. Jeff called this exercise minimizing regrets, because even then it became clear to him that the internet was a great future, and you should take advantage of this to the maximum, even if you have to radically change your life. Take advantage of the opportunities that life throws at you. Interestingly, initially Jeff was not going to create an online bookstore, but another network business. He was not a fan of books, but after thinking about them, they seemed to him the most suitable product for online sale. At least because their catalog had over 3 million items by that time, and delivery to customers was simple and inexpensive. In general, a stable long-tail business is just exactly what you need for e-commerce. It can be up and running quickly and doesn't require a lot of money, so Bezos just used the right opportunity. Jeff chuckled again, remembering how he had heard about the internet's 2,300% growth in the previous year in early 1994, and at first thought about its possibilities. In fact, the figure was 100 times higher. Then the network was developing at a fantastic pace. That is, his decision was based on a mistake, but despite this mistake, it worked. However, in his opinion, own mistakes and defeats are a necessary part of personal experience, which ultimately helps to achieve success. And as a whole, although everyone believes that it's better to draw conclusions from the mistakes of other people, he does not agree with this. Lessons from his own mistakes are learned much faster and more effectively, so it's still better to learn from them. Do not be afraid of failure and have work ethic in the long run. But what is no less important is that once you have learned something, you can't stop developing to look for new opportunities. After all, you can look at any process from a new, non-standard point of view and eventually find a more effective solution that allows you to achieve even greater success than the outcome you initially thought would occur, or as a last resort, find an alternative option. Yes, and about the alternative, last time at the same conference, Bezos was asked what he would do if his company failed. Then he surprised the audience very much by giving them two answers at once, and the first one was quite logical. Most likely I would have become a very happy programmer. I'm used to starting from scratch. But the second one didn't fit into the standards of such events. I have a fantasy that I could be a bartender, a very good bartender, although very slow. I like to make cocktails. I approach it with all necessary care as an art, and it's exactly slowness that I would make my thing. In my bar, there would be a sign that says, "Do you want it to be quick or do you want it to be good?" But this was also an alternative, which, according to Bezos, should always be available to any person as a last resort. And Jeff was always sure that it was necessary to work for the long term. He first showed this quality back in 1997, when he wrote in a letter to Amazon shareholders that he didn't care about quarterly earnings. And the fundamental indicator of the company's success for him is shareholder value created in the long term. It'll be a direct result of their ability to expand and strengthen already current leading position in the market. An example of this long-term strategy was Prime, launched in 2005, which offered free 2-day shipping for $79 per year. Buyers of such a subscription quickly became convinced of its reliability and usefulness and began to order a lot of goods, and therefore, in the short term, the company's delivery costs often became more than the cost of such a service. And no doubt that many shareholders were dissatisfied with this. They were only interested in profit here and now, at any cost. But Jeff was not interested in them at all, and he continued his strategy, which eventually paid off completely and created a reserve for the future. Do not spend the money you earn on consumer goods, rather invest. After all, more and more people became the company's customers, who, due to the turnover, albeit not immediately, but brought it to profit. In addition, Amazon has been reinvesting its revenues back into the business for a long time, gradually expanding it and increasing volumes. Not everyone was willing to endure it for so long, and at the end sold their shares, but they were quickly replaced by other people, those who agreed with his strategy. If you're doing something interesting, you're gonna have critics. If you absolutely can't stand criticism, just don't do anything new or interesting. Jeff remembered his phrase once said and thought that it was clearly worth repeating it again today, because he had seen a lot of critics in his life. Usually they were people who could not achieve anything in life themselves and tried to somehow assert themselves at the expense of others with their unnecessary remarks. Well, let them try. Let them try. He didn't give importance to this a quarter of a century ago, and even more so does not care about their opinions now. Maintain a work-life balance. It's important. But what he really gave importance to was the organization of his work. For one example, Bezos could not tolerate multitasking, that is, doing several things at the same time. He always tried to do them on a first-come, first-served basis, whether it was writing a business plan, reading emails, or having lunch with family or friends. And he didn't want to be distracted by anything else, because he preferred to concentrate as much as possible on what he was doing at the moment. By the way, experts agree with this approach. Multitasking reduces the assimilation of new information, and a person is worse at separating really important things from not so important ones, and accordingly, he makes more wrong decisions. At the same time, Jeff Bezos didn't limit himself to Amazon, gradually expanding his business interests. So in 2013, he acquired a large publishing house, the Washington Post, for $250 million. And even earlier, in 2000, he founded the aerospace company Blue Origin. Yes, a man was interested in space flights and was going to establish orbital tourism, but this business turned out to be more difficult than he initially thought. But nevertheless, the company managed to create its own suborbital rocket and ship, which have already made several successful flights with tourists to the edge of space. By the way, the very first one was held with his own participation. Remembering this, Bezos closed his eyes for a second, remembering the view of the Earth that opened up from the porthole. Yes, work is work, but if you are not passionate about it, making money in vain will become meaningless and devalue your very existence. And in general, it's necessary to maintain a balance between work and life, although he himself preferred the concept of harmony in everything. Work and personal life should be independent and at the same time complement each other, like yin and yang. If I'm happy at home, it makes me a better employee, a better boss at work. If I'm productive and in demand at work, it makes me a more balanced and positive husband and father at home. Once said a businessman who never mixed work and personal life. All this taken together eventually led him to the first place in the Forbes rating, which he held for 4 years in a row. And although Bezos then ceased to be the richest man in the world, he still remained in the top 3 and continues to do what he truly loves. Well, the conference is about to begin, and he will now be asked a lot of questions again and again. But this does not scare him at all. After all, the truth, as you know, is always easy and pleasant to tell. That's it for today. Thank you for watching this episode about Jeff Bezos. Enjoyed the episode? Leave a like and subscribe. And don't skip future episodes. See you later.